You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
It's night 2 of the Democratic National Convention. And you may remember last night, both producer Tawala Sharp and I were commenting about how far over as in overtime night 1 went. We said that is really, really strange. That probably messed up a lot of plans. And President Biden didn't hit the stage until 11:30 East Coast time. Now, if you're the keynote speaker for the evening, especially if you're the sitting president, hitting the stage at 11:30 East Coast time was not the plan, especially when this is supposed to be like a goodbye moment for the president as far as his public addressing of the Democratic Party. He hit the stage at 11:30 p.m. Depending on what report you read, Biden staffers were angry that the president wasn't given more prime time during the time, because most of these events are scheduled with respect to pleasing the East Coast. So you don't want him on stage after 10 p.m. because you start losing audience. And if he doesn't hit the stage until 11:30 p.m., you've already lost audience no matter what. You just have. So you didn't get to maximize the moment, at least for whatever designs Joe Biden had. And I was watching the rundown with Tawala because we were trying to schedule, okay, we know we're going to take the address. So it's a function of we have to plan, all right, are we going to take this break or not? I'm talking to Mark. I'm talking to Steph. It's like, are we going to go to commercial? No, I think it's coming to the stage. Well, what happened was the DNC didn't follow its own schedule because they were so far behind. They were at least an hour and a half behind, and they took people off the schedule. Singer James Taylor, Fire and Rain. James Taylor was supposed to perform last night right after, I believe, the First Lady, kind of bridging the gap between the First Lady and the President. James Taylor was actually rehearsing in the hall. He was ready to go, and they gave him the axe because they were more than an hour and a half behind time. But here's the funny part. The DNC press people didn't tell the truth. They said, quote, because of the raucous applause interrupting speaker after speaker, we ultimately skipped elements of our program to ensure we could get to President Biden as quickly as possible so that he could speak directly to the American people. We are proud of the electric atmosphere in our convention hall and proud that our convention is showcasing the broad and diverse coalition behind the Harris Walls ticket throughout the week on and off the stage. That was a statement that was released to the Hollywood Reporter. And again, Tawala and I were watching the events in studio, and we both said, wow, they gave Hillary Clinton a lot of time. Or she took extra time. Because usually when you're speaking earlier in the evening, you're not allotted that much time. I know she's a name in the party, but given where she was placed in the program, you don't take because we were thinking she got on stage maybe 10 minutes before we started the show last night. And we were wondering, well, are we going to take anything from her speech? And I said, nah, because she's not going to be on stage 15 minutes from then. And she was on 20 minutes from then. She was speaking a good 20 minutes. And I was thinking, that's odd. But it set in motion how the rest of the night got further and further behind. And so you ended up with the Joe Biden hitting the stage at 11:30 p.m. East Coast time, because I remember we were taking the lead up right before the break, and I said, Stephen, are we going to go to this commercial break or not? And it's like, no, this is actually Biden, so that means he's getting ready to go to the president. And so we took it all away, and he spoke for another 50 minutes, which put him well into Tuesday morning East Coast time. So, these are the things which are going on behind the scenes that sometimes people don't realize. And I knew when they were behind, it's like that could not have been the plan. Not for the president, not for the money that they were spending, and not for the overall look, because you want your keynote to hit during the middle of prime time, because they're supposed to be out by 10 p.m. Local time. They're in Chicago, so that's 8 p.m. our time. Chicago's 2 hours ahead.
People sue Madonna for that kind of thing.
No, Tawala and I were just talking about that for concerts and union houses. Yeah. You can't go an hour and a half over ever.
That much money, or for an event like that, the bill that the union workers sent out was massive.
Well, no, it was times 10 because it's Chicago union. How Chicago gets down.
They get down. So and again, when everyone is out, there can't be a single security person in the building, nothing. If they can't touch a light until everything is cleared, man.
I suspect that this night will go a lot quicker. Of course, they will have the Obamas, both former President Obama and also former First Lady Michelle Obama, who will be speaking, and they'll close out the night. So I expect probably former President Obama to hit the stage in the next 15, 20 minutes.
Absolutely, because from looking at the schedule, I believe that they were supposed to come on after
the second gentleman.
The second gentleman, yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably, they're much more on schedule tonight because someone got their hand slapped. Someone probably got fired after last night. But we'll continue to follow that. We'll bring you some of the remarks of former President Obama if it hits not during a commercial break. It's later with Mo Kelly. KFI AM 640. We are live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
And last night I was talking to producer Twella Sharp, and he was asking, like, how do we know if the convention, I'm paraphrasing, how do we know how well the convention is going? Because I was making the point, talking about the DNC, that the DNC is a pep rally. It's about uniting the party and having this swell of support. You want to turn a moment into momentum and turn that momentum into a movement, which would, in theory, propel you through the tape. It's like running to the finish line, which would be election day. Well, there's certain metrics along the way. It could be polling over the course of the week. It could be fundraising over the course of the week. And as that information comes in, you get a better sense of whether the DNC is being received, whether it's resonating with voters or just Americans more generally. Because I think people sometimes overestimate how much average Americans do not pay close attention to all of this politics. Now, we sometimes get in our bubbles and we think because we watch MSNBC or Fox News every single day that everyone cares about these things as much as we do. And that's really not the truth. People don't really start tuning in, literally, until the conventions. And that's when it starts to become more and more top of mind for people. But as far as metrics go, Deadline Hollywood threw out these numbers that the DNC drew 20 million viewers last night. Well, Mo, what does that mean? Give us some context. Okay, 20 million for the first night was more viewers than the first 3 nights of the RNC. More viewers for DNC night 1 than either night 1, 2, or 3 for the RNC. The RNC fourth night, in which former President Trump was speaking, drew 25 million. You can use that as a comparison point. Now, that doesn't mean that more people are going to vote Democrat, but it does mean that people are tuned in and interested to see what is happening in Chicago. That is a data point. And if it grows, then you will see that there is increasing interest, and I would think that pattern would be more significant. For example, if they had 20 million last night and it drops off to 14 million, that's more like, oh, we're just tuning in to see what this is all about. We don't want to see more. And then it's not really significant. But if it goes from 20 million to 22 or 23 million, then you have to start looking at the fact that people are enjoying the DNC or gravitating to it. You're not going to grow your audience if the product is not then something that you want to see. So that is what I'm looking for. That data point will tell us which way it's headed. And there's something else. I also talked about fundraising. We don't know how much Democrats fundraise in the last 24 hours, but I can tell you about how much they've managed to raise in the past 30 days. And if you combine that with the viewership, in other words, if there's going to be escalating viewership, then it's reasonable to assume that there would be escalating fundraising. The Harris ticket, since she became the presumptive nominee, she's still the presumptive nominee. She's not the actual nominee, not until Thursday. Or actually tonight with the roll call, she becomes the actual nominee. But since then and now, the Harris election effort has raised about $500 million, $500 million in about 30 days. No matter how you cut it, that's pretty significant. Again, that doesn't mean votes, but it does pay for an election. It pays for ads. It pays for social media. It pays for campaigning on the ground, visiting the different states and the retail politics. It makes sure that there are no financial limitations to whatever a campaign wants it to be. It doesn't mean that they won't mess it up. It just means that money won't be an issue. And that's about a good $300. I'm sorry. That's not even counting the $400-500 million that Joe Biden had brought in, and also the inherited money. So she's close to $1 billion. Because remember, the fundraising under Biden-Harris made money. That's separate from this. Remember, they had like a $200 billion they fundraised in July-ish, leading up to July, and there was a question of who would get that money. Well, it had to be Kamala Harris or not at all because of FEC rules. So just letting you know, First Lady Michelle Obama is speaking right now. We may drop in for that. As a matter of fact, let's drop in that and see what she has to say for a moment.
We got a big night ahead. Thank you all so much. Thank you so much. Okay. Hey. Hello, Chicago. Yeah. All right. Something wonderfully magical is in the air, isn't it? Yeah. You know, we're feeling it here in this arena, but it's spreading all across this country we love. A familiar feeling that's been buried too deep for far too long. You know what I'm talking about. It's the contagious power of hope. The anticipation, the energy, the exhilaration of once again being on the cusp of a brighter day. The chance to vanquish the demons of fear, division, and hate that have consumed us and continue pursuing the unfinished promise of this great nation, the dream that our parents and grandparents fought and died and sacrificed for. America, hope is making a comeback. To be honest, I am realizing that until recently, I have mourned the dimming of that hope. And maybe you've experienced the same feelings. Is that deep pit in my stomach, a palpable sense of dread about the future. And for me, that mourning has also been mixed with my own personal grief. The last time I was here in my hometown was to memorialize my mother, the woman who showed me the meaning of hard work and humility and decency, the woman who set my moral compass high and showed me the power of my own voice. Folks, I still feel her loss so profoundly. I wasn't even sure if I'd be steady enough to stand before you tonight, but my heart compelled me to be here because of the sense of duty that I feel to honor her memory and to remind us all not to squander the sacrifices our elders made to give us a better future.
It's Later with Mo Kelly. We'll continue to follow the events at the DNC. First Lady Michelle Obama, former First Lady Michelle Obama, speaking right now.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
And as we continue to talk about what's going on at the DNC and give some perspective and analysis about what is significant, what is insignificant. Something I think which is significant, there were a number of Republicans, not former Republicans, but Republicans who spoke today at the DNC. And you think, well, they're just sellouts. They're just rhinos. They're Republicans in name only. Well, that's not actually the case. There are a number of people, and this goes back to the whole purpose of a convention. It's about unity. And what I thought was a missed opportunity during the RNC, for whatever reasons, the Republicans can run their convention however they want. I thought it was a missed opportunity to not have, anytime you have a living former president, you want that person at your convention. They didn't have former President George W. Bush, and there were a lot of present day senators and powerful leaders in the Republican Party which weren't at the RNC, because you want to demonstrate unity. And a lot of those people who, for whatever reasons, may not support Donald Trump, some are more vocal than others, and some are showing up at the DNC. And they are former Georgia Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan. He was elected to the State House in 2012. He was later elected at the state lieutenant governor in 2018 and did not seek re-election after that. There's Mesa, Arizona Mayor John Giles. Saw some of his speech earlier today. And he was someone who I guess came up under former Senator, the late Senator John McCain. And we all know former Illinois former Congressman Adam Kinzinger. He was on the January 6th House Committee. The last two, I think, are most significant. Former Trump White House national security official Olivia Troy was speaking earlier this evening, and also former Trump White House press secretary Stephanie Grisham. That's significant, if only because someone from the previous Republican administration not only not showing public support, but also showing up at the opposing party's convention. So those are the different layers that you have at these events, but a lot of it is about perception. You're trying to present a picture. You're trying to paint a mosaic. You're trying to reach as many people as you can. And during the convention, this is about the only time where you get, I'll say, a main line of a party, its leadership, its platform, its ideas, and they have most of the networks. Like you turn on most of the networks, NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. For the most part, they're carrying and covering the DNC as they did the RNC just a month ago. You don't get this type of screen time. But also this. Tawala, remember we were watching the roll call of states, and the roll call of states is the process where the state delegates officially pledge their delegates for the nomination and how the presumptive nominee becomes the actual nominee. The Democrats today obviously did it state by state, but they also had a DJ playing music from that state. Like Michigan, they had Eminem music they were playing. They played Beyonce from Texas. But you brought something even more, I would say, unusual to my attention.
The fact that they were using DJ Cassidy. DJ Cassidy right now is not just nationally known. He is internationally known for bringing together musical artists, young and old, for this event, which he calls Pass the Mic. And he brought Pass the Mic to the DNC floor. And by doing that, he literally captivated all of the younger generation that the DNC is going for. Why? Because this man has a damn near a quadrillion, followers on all social media outlets, meaning that the roll call was going out across all social media platforms.
And I noticed that each state has no more than 60 seconds. And if you haven't figured it out, that's about the length of a TikTok.
Yes.
With music that has already been cleared. They don't have to worry about being sued for it. They have the rights to use it and also use it on social media. So what happens is that whole roll call, the different states will be going out to millions and millions of people just on TikTok, and I'm quite sure Instagram and everything, where they can forward the message all around the world. I know it's just United States and voters, but I'm saying you want to reach as many people as you can, because people now, like I said last segment, are just, for the most part, starting to really tune in to the presidential race. I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about me. We've been following it since the last election. I'm talking about the average everyday American has not been tuning in and has not been going at each other on social media day in and day out. But this, for someone who's maybe 18 to 28, maybe their first or second election in which they'll be actually voting, they may be seeing this process for the very first time. And their first point of contact may not be TV. It may be TikTok.
Like my son, this is his first year being able to vote, and he is probably seeing the roll call on social media because
he's not watching TV.
He's not watching TV, but he is watching what's happening on TikTok, and things like that are discussed among him and his friends group. That is how he finds most of his politics, is on social media. So something like that going out to this generation that you need to vote more than ever now, yeah, that wins.
See, that's how the whole process has changed, where you and me, we grew up, we see this on TV. We're used to the customary way of how politicians and elected officials reach voters. But I can tell you, my blended sons, they're not watching this on TV. I guarantee you they're not watching this. They have no intentions of watching this. And whatever opinions that they may form about the presidential election will be from TikTok. I guarantee you that.
Whatever happened to the good old days when a dad would beat your political opinions right into you when you're a kid?
I think that went out in the 1980s, but I know what you're talking about. And a lot of times we got our political opinions from our parents, either directly or indirectly, but we got them from our friends and family right around us because, let's call it indoctrination or whatever. But, you know, you were given your political views as a child. And then hopefully as you got older, you started to form your own views and come to your own conclusions. But now that dynamic, I don't think is the same. And maybe it is on some level, but not the same level. If only because children have access to far more information than you or I did, than Tuala or me or even Stefan, because they got this little computer in their hands and access to the internet, and they can find out a whole lot of stuff. A lot of it we don't even necessarily condone.
Oh, and they don't just use it to look up naked people. By the way, one quick bit of information before we go to break here. You were talking about Republicans who switched teams and are supporting the DNC here. I keep running across this figure that 40 out of Trump's 44 hand-selected cabinet members do not support him. I'm just reporting that number and making note of the fact that that's extraordinary. We've never seen that before.
It is extraordinary, but there is a difference. And I would make one subtle distinction. There's the 40 who are not supporting him and remaining in the background. And there are those few like Adam Kinzinger and Olivia Troy and Stephanie Grisham who are taking the affirmative step to step forward and say, hey, we are still Republicans, but we're not supporting Donald Trump.
Right. And also, remember, we didn't see Mike Pence anywhere.
Is he still alive?
Look at the time.
KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI Mo Kelly live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app as we watch what is happening at the DNC. Former President Barack Obama has now taken the stage. Let's listen to a little bit of what he's saying.
At a time when our economy was reeling, we needed a leader with the determination to drive what would become the world's strongest recovery. 15 million jobs, higher wages, lower health care costs. At a time when the other party had turned into a cult of personality, we needed a leader who was steady and brought people together and was selfless enough to do the rarest thing there is in politics, putting his own ambition aside for the sake of the country. History will remember Joe Biden as an outstanding president who defended democracy at a moment of great danger. And I am proud to call him my president, but I am even prouder to call him my friend. The torch has been passed. Now it is up to all of us to fight for the America we believe in. And make no mistake, it will be a fight. For all the incredible energy we've been able to generate over the last few weeks, for all the rallies and the memes, this will still be a tight race in a closely divided country. A country where too many Americans are still struggling. Where a lot of Americans don't believe government can help. And as we gather here tonight, the people who will decide this election are asking a very simple question. Who will fight for me? Who's thinking about my future, about my children's future, about our future together? One thing is for certain, Donald Trump is not losing sleep over that question. Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. It has been a constant stream of gripes and grievances that's actually been getting worse now that he's afraid of losing to Kamala. There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes. It just goes on and on and on. The other day I heard someone compare Trump to the neighbor who keeps running his leaf blower outside your window every minute of every day. Now, from a neighbor, that's exhausting. From a president, it's just dangerous. The truth is, Donald Trump sees power as nothing more than it means to his ends. He wants the middle class to pay the price for another huge tax cut that would mostly help him and his rich friends. He killed a bipartisan immigration deal written in part by one of the most conservative Republicans in Congress that would have helped secure our southern border because he thought trying to actually solve the problem would hurt his campaign. He doesn't. Do not boo. Vote. He doesn't seem to care if more women lose their reproductive freedom since it won't affect his life. And most of all, Donald Trump wants us to think that this country is hopelessly divided between us and them. Between the real Americans, who of course support him, and the outsiders who don't. And he wants you to think that you'll be richer and safer if you will just give him the power to put those other people back in their place. It is one of the oldest tricks in politics. From a guy whose act has, let's face it, gotten pretty stale. We do not need 4 more years of bluster and bumbling and chaos. We have seen that movie before, and we all know that the sequel is usually worse.
KFI AM 640, later with Mo Kelly. We're listening to some of the moments at the DNC. Former President Barack Obama is speaking right now.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI, Mr. Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app, and be sure to tune in tomorrow at 9 a.m. as you can pick up Gary and Shannon as they're broadcasting live all week from the Democratic National Convention. As a matter of fact, right now, the former President Barack Obama is speaking. We'll take a little bit more of his audio.
Kamala knows that if we want to help people get ahead, we need to put a college degree within reach of more Americans. But she also knows college shouldn't be the only ticket to the middle class. We need to follow the lead of governors like Tim Walz, who said, if you've got the skills and the drive, you shouldn't need a degree to work for state government. And in this new economy, we need a president who actually cares about the millions of people all across this country who wake up every single day to do the essential, often thankless work, to care for our sick, to clean our streets, to deliver our packages. We need a president who will stand up for their right to bargain for better wages and working conditions. And Kamala will be that president. Yes, she can. Yes, she can. A Harris-Walz administration can help us move past some of the tired old debates that keep stifling progress. Because at their core, Kamala and Tim understand that when everybody gets a fair shot, we are all better off. They understand that when every child gets a good education, the whole economy gets stronger. When women are paid the same as men for doing the same job, all families benefit. They understand that we can secure our borders without tearing kids away from their parents. Just like we can keep our streets safe while also building trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve and eliminating bias, that will make it better for everybody. Donald Trump and his well-heeled donors, they don't see the world that way. For them, one group's gains is necessarily another group's loss. For them, freedom means that the powerful can do pretty much what they please. Whether it's fire workers trying to organize a union, or put poison in our rivers, or avoid paying taxes like everybody else has to do. Well, we have a broader idea of freedom. We believe in the freedom to provide for your family if you're willing to work hard. The freedom to breathe clean air and drink clean water and send your kids to school without worrying if they'll come home. We believe that true freedom gives each of us the right to make decisions about our own life, how we worship, what our family looks like, how many kids we have, who we marry. And we believe that freedom requires us to recognize that other people have the freedom to make choices that are different than ours. That's okay. That's the America Kamala Harris and Tim Walz believe in. An America where we the people includes everyone. Because that's the only way this American experiment works. And despite what our politics might suggest, I think most Americans understand that. Democracy isn't just a bunch of abstract principles and dusty laws in some book somewhere. It's the values we live by. It's the way we treat each other, including those who don't look like us, or pray like us, or see the world exactly like we do. That sense of mutual respect has to be part of our message. Our politics have become so polarized these days that all of us across the political spectrum seem so quick to assume the worst in others, unless they agree with us on every single issue. We start thinking that the only way to win is to scold and shame and out-yell the other side. And after a while, regular folks just tune out, or they don't bother to vote. Now, that approach may work for the politicians who just want attention and thrive on division, but it won't work for us to make progress on the things we care about, the things that really affect people's lives. We need to remember that we've all got our blind spots and contradictions and prejudices, and that if we want to win over those who aren't yet ready to support our candidates, we need to listen to their concerns and maybe learn something in the process. After all, if a parent or grandparent occasionally says something that makes us cringe, we don't automatically assume they're bad people. We recognize that the world is moving fast, that they need time and maybe a little encouragement to catch up. Our fellow citizens deserve the same grace we hope they'll extend to us. That's how we can build a true democratic majority, one that can get things done. And by the way, that does not just matter to the people in this country. The rest of the world is watching to see if we can actually pull this off. No nation, no society has ever tried to build a democracy as big and as diverse as ours before. One that includes people that over decades have come from every corner of the globe. One where our allegiances and our community are defined not by race or blood, but by a common creed. And that's why when we uphold our values, the world's a little brighter. When we don't, the world's a little dimmer. And dictators and autocrats feel emboldened. And over time, we become less safe. We shouldn't be the world's policemen, and we can't eradicate every cruelty and injustice in the world. But America can be and must be a force for good.
This Later with Mo Kelly, KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Former President Obama is still speaking, and it's interesting because even though the DNC went long last night, they're going to go long again tonight. Former President Obama, he obviously is just warming up in the sense of he's in the heart of his speech, and he's a good, I would say 35, 36 minutes in, and which is 11:30 again on the East Coast. Although President Biden was starting about 10 minutes earlier than this last night, they're still going to end up with pretty much the same problem, if you will, running late, and you have your keynote speaker not necessarily hitting, I'll say, the sweet spot of the primetime audience. But, I guess I just wonder who gets fired over this, Tuala. Doesn't someone get fired? Because you would think, let me back up. You may not know, all the speakers are given a certain amount of time in advance. They're told, let's say you have 2 minutes. Let's say you have 90 seconds. Let's say you have 3 minutes, or you're only supposed to introduce the next person. You're not supposed to ad lib, what have you. And yes, they do figure in crowd response to the overall timing. But to again be at this point, they'll probably be at least an hour over is strange.
Well, they've also raised so much money, they're possibly just saying, you know what, spend it. There's no other time to spend it than on the DNC.
Well,
like spend it now, let's go big and get all this good press.
Well, then there's that, because if you weren't listening earlier, I indicated how Kamala Harris had raised $500 million in the past month. And I was positing if the ratings, the viewership for night one was an indication of where things were going, and it goes in an upward direction. It was 20 million the first night. Former President Obama just finished speaking, and we find out tomorrow that the viewership is even more than 20 million. That probably means that the fundraising will increase as well.
Absolutely.
You're having increasing interest, not lacking or waning interest. And if you didn't hear, the first night of the DNC was more than the first 3 nights of the RNC, if you want to make a direct comparison. 20 million for the first night of the DNC. The RNC never eclipsed 20 million until the last night in which former President Trump spoke, and that was 25 million. So I think tomorrow we'll get a better sense of whether the DNC is on an upward or downward trajectory. It was the first night was about looky-loo and see what's going on generally, or is it something which is captured America's imagination and more people are tuning in? And I say that because if they're increasing in viewership, that means people are also hearing about it from other people, or they're seeing it on social media and they didn't see the first night, and so they want to catch the second night. That's where also I go back to the fact that regardless of party, you always want to have former presidents speaking, because the former president brings a built-in audience. Always. It's nice to hear from Congressperson so-and-so or Governor so-and-so. But if you have a 2-term president that can speak, that always carries weight. That's heft. You want that as a party. And the Democrats do have, I would say, the benefit in that regard. They have 3 presidents who are speaking, one-term president who's the sitting president in Joe Biden. They have 2 former 2-term presidents in Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. All of them are speaking. So tomorrow, I think, will give us a better sense of where the DNC is going. And also, you can always listen to KFI from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. as Gary and Shannon will be covering these events live and giving their perspective of what they're seeing on the ground. I said this before. I've only been to one DNC. The same year I went to one RNC. It was 2008 in a work capacity. And they're very, very different conventions. They're not only are they trying to speak to different groups of people, the thought and approach are very different. For the RNC, which was in Minneapolis, and let me tell you, Mark Ronner, nice place to visit. Don't ever want to go back. There's just nothing to do in Minneapolis. Nothing.
I don't think I've ever been there.
I thought you'd been just about everywhere in the Midwest.
Minneapolis? No. Isn't that where the Mystery Science Theater guys come from? And they always make fun of the Mall of America?
Yes. Mall of America is.
Never had any reason to go there whatsoever.
Either did I, but since it was for work, why not? And it was in the dead of summer, so it was hot and humid. But the way that the Republicans put their convention together, and from what I'm told, is very similar. It's about people where they feel that anyone could, this is just my take on it, where anyone would walk into that place. Anyone. Like, you could just be walking by outside. It's like, hey, come on in, come one, come all. That's how they try to position it. Where the DNC is like, hey, we have this hot performance in here. Come on here. We have this party jumping off. And that's how they market the DNC. And you can see it's kind of consistent with that, where the DNC has all sorts of performances, music guests, music woven into even the roll call. And the RNC is just not built that way. They're not trying to be built that way. And it's just 2 different methods and strategies of trying to reach their core demographics. So tomorrow, to answer your question again, Tuala, I think we'll have some updated fundraising numbers. We'll definitely have some updated viewership numbers, and we'll see whether the DNC is landing with people and picking up momentum or losing momentum, because tomorrow night is Governor Walz is going to formally accept the vice presidential nomination. And usually there's a crescendo throughout the week.
Now, isn't tomorrow it also former President Bill Clinton?
Yep.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, the way they've stacked this deck, you would have thought they played their best card on night one, but it's like, no, but we have both Michelle and Barack on night 2. We have Bill and Walz on night 3, and we've got Harris on night 4. We're pretty much ramping up.
That's the way it's supposed to go. And they have, there's always like a voyeuristic factors. Like, we haven't heard from Bill Clinton in I don't know when.
Yep.
You always want to know, what's his health like? How's he sounding? What type of remarks he's going to make? Because you got to think, this might be the last DNC for Bill Clinton. Honestly, he's getting up there in age, and you don't know what the next DNC will need, what they'll want, or whether he'll want to be a part of it in the same way. So there's a voyeur aspect to this. And, this is a moment in politics that you don't see all that often, the type of fervor and excitement for one party, this type of unity you haven't seen in the Democrats since 2008. But, we'll see if they can sustain it. One thing I have noticed, and this goes back to my conversation with Mark Ronner, no mention of the protests. The protests have not played any role.
No, and I think the media was trying to build them up into more than they were in the first place. As we had discussed, I guess it was yesterday, it seems like a lot of people in news media are really trying to gin something up, and they're getting kind of pissy that it's not happening.
Well,
I've been following this really closely on all sorts of different venues. All
you can do is tell the truth, and the protests have not materialized at all. Are there people protesting out there? Yes. Is it a thing? Is it something that merits the attention that it's been receiving? No.
And by the way, I can tell you, having been in the middle of the WTO riots, massive Klan rally, all that kind of stuff, you think you want to be in the middle of that, covering it? You do not. No, absolutely do not.
No, they want to cover it from a distance, of course.
Yeah, you don't want to be in the middle of that. I've been tear gassed and shot with rubber bullets more times than any journalist I know. It's not fun.
No, they want to talk about it from the anchor desk.
Yeah, so do I now.
It's Later with Mo Kelly, KFI AM 640, live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.